Today, we're diving into the really powerful testimony of a man who spent 17 years as a Jehovah's Witness elder. He's pulling back the curtain on 4 specific rituals, things that happen in every Kingdom Hall, that he claims have a much, much darker purpose than anyone realizes. So this is the core of his argument. This former elder is saying that these weekly practices, which look totally harmless on the surface, are actually designed as techniques of control. And get this, he says if you've ever been to a meeting and felt this strange, heavy feeling, a sense of oppression, you weren't imagining it. So why should we listen to this guy? What gives his story so much weight? Well, for 17 years, he wasn't just a member, he was an elder. That position gave him a backstage pass, access to information and meetings that are completely off limits to the average person sitting in the pews. And you know, this wasn't just a phase for him. He was in it for his entire life. He was born into it, a second-generation witness, baptized at 14. He starts climbing the ladder, becoming a ministerial servant at 25. And by the time he's 32, boom, he's appointed as an elder, a position with some serious authority. This is where it gets really interesting. As an elder, he got his hands on their secret playbook. It's a manual called Shepherd the Flock of God, and it's for elders' eyes only. It literally details how to handle pretty much any situation you can think of. And because it's kept under lock and key, hidden from regular members, this book is the source of all his insider knowledge. Okay, so let's get into the first ritual he talks about. He calls it repetitive programming. And this all goes down during the main weekly meeting, the one known as the Watchtower Study. This happens in every single congregation all over the world. He breaks down how this study actually works, and it's a loop. An elder reads a paragraph from their magazine. Then he asks a question that's printed right there on the page. A member in the audience raises their hand and gives the answer, which is almost word for word from the paragraph they just read. The elder says thank you, and then they do it again and again, up to 70 times in a single hour. So you might be wondering, what's the point of all that? Well, he says this has nothing to do with education. He calls it a thought-stopping technique. The whole process is designed to reward you for repeating the pre-approved answer, not for thinking critically or analyzing anything. It creates this mental loop that just bypasses your own ability to reason. It's a form of programming. And to show the real-world impact, he tells the story of a young woman named Jennifer. She started having these awful panic attacks, but only during the meetings. The elders just told her she was spiritually weak. But the moment she left the organization for good, her anxiety vanished. Almost overnight. She described it like a door just slammed shut on the source of that feeling. Let's move on to the second ritual he lays out. This one involves a system of forced confession that happens in complete secrecy, behind closed doors, in something they call a judicial committee. To really understand how heavy this is, he explains how it's used in the most serious cases imaginable. These committees of 3 elders meet for all kinds of sins. But he asks a really critical question. What happens when a child reports being abused? And that's where we run into the 2-witness rule. The elder claims the organization misuses a scripture to create this policy. And the policy says that unless there is a second eyewitness to the act of abuse, which, let's be honest, almost never happens, the elders are instructed by their secret manual to do nothing. No formal action is taken. The abuser is not disciplined. So you end up with this massive disconnect. The stated goal, what they say they're doing, is protecting Jehovah's name and keeping the congregation pure. But the elder argues the actual result, what really happens, is a system that protects abusers. Meanwhile, the victims are silenced and told to just wait on Jehovah for justice. Okay, ritual number 3. He calls this the spiritual surveillance network. It sounds like something out of a spy movie, right? But he insists it's a very real, though invisible, system where everybody is constantly monitoring everybody else. So what kind of things get reported? Oh, pretty much anything. Missing a few too many meetings, watching an R-rated movie, if you're a guy, maybe growing a beard, even just spending time with friends who aren't witnesses or expressing a doubt about a doctrine. And all of this is framed as loving concern. You're not snitching, you're helping. You can just imagine the psychological effect. He argues that this constant fear of being watched forces people to perform righteousness instead of actually living with authentic faith. He tells this heartbreaking story about a man named David who had a complete mental breakdown after he was punished just for having a beer with a coworker. He just couldn't keep up the performance anymore.
And now we come to the fourth and final ritual he identifies, and it's the one he calls the most insidious of them all: weaponized isolation. You've probably heard of it by its common name: shunning.
It all starts with this simple, cold announcement. An elder gets up in front of the whole congregation and just says something like, "Jane Doe is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses." That's it. No explanation is ever given. But from that one sentence, a switch is flipped.
So what does shunning really mean? In practice, it's total social death. No one in the congregation is allowed to speak to you, your family members, your parents, your children, your brothers and sisters. They are all required to cut off all but the most essential contact. You're basically treated as if you're dead. He really drives home the impact with the story of Sarah, a 19-year-old who got disfellowshipped just for asking questions. She survived a suicide attempt, and she said later that the most painful part of it all wasn't just being abandoned. It was knowing that her family truly believed that God wanted them to shun her. So, after laying all of this out, the repetitive programming, the secret confessions, the constant surveillance, and the brutal isolation, the elder asks one final question to tie it all together. What's the common thread here? And here's his ultimate conclusion. Each of these rituals is a different form of psychological control, and they're all designed to break down a person's individual will. When you put them all together, they create this state of spiritual vulnerability that makes you completely dependent on the organization for your identity, your relationships, your whole reality.
And this is how all the pieces fit together. It's not just one thing, it's a whole system. The repetition stops you from thinking critically. The confession system makes you afraid. The constant surveillance ensures you conform, and the threat of total isolation keeps everyone in line. It's a complete interlocking system of control.
The elder leaves us with this final, really provocative thought, aimed especially at anyone still inside the organization. Consider the possibility that what you've been taught is love might actually be control. And that's a question worth reflecting on, no matter what you believe.